Mr. Russo, I mean, there are surely areas of convergence which need to be highlighted rather than look at the areas of divergence. Wouldn't that be a more positive spirit in which all countries need to look at the next couple of days?
If the G20 could get together and solve those challenges, that would be terrific. But what they focus on are bigger issues, systemic financial risk running between countries. We've seen what real crises look like, and I think everything that my colleague brought up before are exactly on point. We've got challenges here domestically, but the G20 is purpose-built for other types of crises, bigger crises.
But the same G20, Mr. Russo, the same G20 was very effective after the 2008 global financial crisis. Now you've got a challenge post-COVID, in the post-Ukraine, where several countries have suffering deep debt crisis, where you need a new multilateral financing system in place. Surely this is an occasion for the G20 again to rise to the occasion like they did in 2008.
I don't know that everybody sees that it's quite the level that it was in 2008, that you don't have systemic risk bleeding from one nation to the other. Mm-hmm. So a lot of countries have their own responsibility. Debt that's held by individual countries can make those arrangements. Again, I'd love to see the G20 work on that, but the real drive for concrete action, I think, is only when things are escalated to a level than they are right now. So I don't know that we're going to have resolution at this summit on many of the topics that you brought up.
Jan Krishna? Yes, Mr. Tangen, you want to quickly respond again?
Yes, I mean, just let's be clear. Mr. Russo is talking in generalities. The financial crisis was caused by the United States. And the fact is that the reason the G20 cannot agree is because the U.S. does not agree. He references the WTO, but forgets to mention it's the U.S. who is the impediment for the WTO working. So, I mean, I can't believe he's actually saying these things on television.
This is, the last thing we want is conflict even before the sides have met. I will give Mr. Russo a chance to respond in a moment. But Jayan Krishna, you're hearing these conflicting viewpoints. And in a way, when you get to specifics, the problems come. In generalities, the world seems, aware of the broad crises, financial and climate change that need to be addressed. But when you get to specifics, there are divisions right out there. As Geeta Mohan was pointing out, when it comes to climate change, India, China, Saudi Arabia, all on the same side, ranged against the Western world. So within the G20, there seem to be fractures at every level. All very well, all the razzmatazz, shaking of hands. The truth is, when you get to specifics, lots of divisions.
So absolutely, Rajdeep, as you mentioned about the climate, as one of the issues, I think the major issue which is pending is who does the funding for financing for climate change. I mean, the countries, developing countries, have been saying that the developed nations have not done enough for climate change. Some time back, there were some commitments made on Paris Accord. Many countries have not met those commitments they had made. So look at, there was an agreement that the developing countries put together would fund almost $100 billion for climate change. Bulk of that money would go to the developing countries. A very, very small percentage of that has actually seen the light of the day. So I think climate financing is a major issue. Who does it? So it's a what solution? I hope that in the bilateral there was some discussion, and there'll be more discussion tomorrow and the day after. But I think it's a global South versus global North issue, or global South versus the Western world. That issue is still not resolved. And there's a lot more negotiation has to happen. But I personally would believe that this is a very serious issue. There is a climate emergency. We have just seen the hottest months of June, July, August in human history. This is not a crisis which is looming ahead for the next generation, a few years down the line. It is there right in front of us. The temperatures rising. We have seen huge, massive forest fires in the US, in Europe, in Australia, and so on and so forth. So I think this needs a very, very huge commitment.
There are obviously separate fora, and unfortunately, even on climate change, when the G20 met, they couldn't come to an agreement.